top of the page. We'll start from there. So just to reiterate what happened, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was accused. Well, two ways of learning shouting about it. Either he was accused of being a min and apokeris, or whether they tried to drag him in and force him to become. And by the way, it says in some of the Gersois, min over here means a follower of Yoshka, because the years actually match up. Because Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus right during the Churban, Beis Hamikdash, which is similar time period. Anyway, so he wanted to know what is it that happened in his life that this happened to him, that that he had ended up in court to try to make him a min. What sin did he possibly do that sort of allowed them to go ahead and bring him to this situation? Or according to the other pshat, that they accused him of being a min, what possible sin did he do that even allowed him to have such a chshad? Unless there's some grounds to it. So Rabbi Akiva said to him, and we had a few times Rabbi Akiva asked him or said things to him that comforted him. So he said to him, maybe you did something in the past, and he remembered that he had pleasure from a vort that a min said, and therefore he gave them some credibility. And that's where it all fell apart. So the Gemara says at the top of the page, and he actually gave you pleasure, and that is precisely why you were. This eventually happened. What happened? Akiva said to me, Akiva, he's kartani. You just reminded me. Pamachas once happened. I was traveling there in the marketplace, the upper marketplace of Tzipori. I found somebody, the Yaakov Ish Kvar Sakan Yishma. His name is Yaakov. Sorry? His name was Yaakov. If somebody could please mute themselves. His name is Yaakov Ish Kvar Sakanya. And he was a min. Amala, he said to him, Amala, he said to me, Kasul b'Torah chem. Well, the very fact that he said it's written in your Torah is already a giveaway that there's something wrong here. Instead of saying our Torah, he said your Torah. It says, Leisavi esnan zaina. You know, I'll take the gift that a zaina receives and turn it into a carbon. If they receive an animal, or if you swap a dog for a sheep, you're not allowed to bring that sheep as a carbon. So he wanted to know, Mao last the men, the basic kisei the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol 7 days prior to Yom Kippur is brought over to the base of Migdash and Har Bayis, and he sits there, and he lives there for 7 consecutive days. Can you at least take that and use it for the Kohen Gadol's purposes? And Taish already says there's no question halachically you definitely can, because they can even use in the base of Midrash itself, they can use to plate the house of the Kodesh Kedoshim. You're allowed to do it to use it. It's not for the fact they have a special pasuk. This is Har Bayis. But you just want to know whether the Rabban stepped in and said it's pasnished. It's incorrect. You shouldn't use it. So you want to know what's the opinion of the Chacham. I didn't answer. He's a min. I didn't want to engage him in conversation. And then he continued. This is how I was taught by my teacher. It says in another pasuk, you took it from the gift of a zoina, and then it returns back to the esnan of a zoina. In other words, it came from an ugly, a dirty place. It can go back to a dirty place, and that's how his teacher taught him. Hanani had, and I enjoyed that word. It makes sense. And that's why the fact I gave that word that came from a min, like a min should cost of Sefer Torah. A goy writes a Sefer Torah, you have to be going. If a min writes a Sefer Torah, even though it's a Sefer Torah, you can't have anything to do with it. You got to get rid of it. And I violated a pasuk, which says in the Torah, it says in the pasuk that you should distance yourself your way. What is that referring to? Minus. Keep your distance from minus. Even the good things they say, you should not accept from them. Nor should you get close to the opening of their doors. Do harashus, and that is the government, because the government only cares for themselves, and they use you and they exploit you, and then eventually they take your money away. The Ikadami, there's another version how we learn this pasuk that harchik malad kecha distance itself zu minas viharashas. That includes apicursus and the government. But tikra of a pesach besa, but don't get close to the opening of the house is referring to something else. Zu zaina. Don't get close to a harlot. Bekama, when you say don't get close, how far away should you be? Amar Rav Chizda, at least arba amas, 4 amas. Whenever it says kiruv, we have in the Gemara when it says by a get, suffix cut of law, suffix cut of life. If a get was there and it's questionable whether it's closer to her, closer to him, the Gemara over there says it's talking about 4 amas. So karav is 4 amas. Or because it's Pesach, the opening of a door, we know a door has 4 amas. Okay, so I did the wrong thing. So the Gemara asks, okay, very nice, but this pasuk that he talks about, that is sort of, ricochets, it goes from a zoyna esna zoyna, it goes back to esna zoyna. How else can you learn pshat? But Abanan haime esna zoyna, my doshbe, what do they do with this pasuk? So we answer Rav Chizda, we actually learned the pasuk Rav Chizda, not that that you that you can use it for filthy, dirty things, but something else altogether. Rav Chizda said, any zoyna that hires itself out and gets paid in kind. At the end, she is so frowned upon by everybody, and she's so marginalized by everybody. The only way that she can have relations is by using these gifts that she received and giving them out to others to hire them. Shenema, as it says in Pasuk, Uvesitcha Esnan, that that when you give an Esnan the gift, the Esnan Lanitin Lach, and the gift was not given to you, but hila hepech. And eventually, it'll be the opposite. That the one who received the gift, this zoyna, will have to give others the gift in order for her to have relations. And in the Gemara says further, this that we say that you have to distance yourself 4 amas from a beis zoyna, upliga de rapados. This actually argues the rapados. Why? What did rapados say? The Torah didn't asa ella kreva shagila roibavad. He says that when it says kreva means intimacy. Doesn't mean physically standing within 4 amas. It means intimacy, and therefore it sounds like from the Gemara here that according to rapados, you don't have to distance yourself at all, as long as no intimacy. Remember, it says the pasuk ish that that a person of kol she'epsar legalis erva. So what's the type tikrev? Only when it comes to a situation where there is gilu arayis, intimacy, not standing within a certain distance. Pesach says an interesting thing. So if you learn Pashut Pshat, that he holds that there's no Pesach wants to know, okay, Mahatayra, there's no Kareva unless it's Gila Roy, but why can't there be an Issa de Rabbanan? That even according to Rapados, Mid Rabbanan, you're not allowed to be within 4 amas. How do you know he's arguing Rav Chizda? Rav Chizda only made an asmachta. That means, maybe the Torah doesn't say you shouldn't be with 4 amas, but he's asmachta on the pasuk. Don't be close. But why? How do we know if Tosha argues? So Tosha says that because Kreva is talking about Gila Rois actually having intimacy, then you can't even make an asmacht out of it to say, well, don't be close to it, because there. And so another like this. There's a big machlek is the Rambam and the Ritva. How do we understand the concept of asmachta? The Rambam writes that a smachta really doesn't mean, the pasuk does not mean that at all. But in order for us to remember what the Isur Rabban is, so we associate it with a pasuk. But the pasuk is not referring to that at all. And that's Rav Chiz's view. So therefore, even the pasuk is talking about Gila Arayis, intimacy, but so what? The Rabbanan decided to make Asa to be within 4 amas of a harlot, and that's an asmachta. However, Pdas learns, like the Ritva. The Ritva says that the asmachta is not just, that we make some association which are totally unrelated. Not at all. The Eibishter wanted that this should be only Asur de Rabbanon, so therefore he made some kind of a remez, some kind of illusion, some kind of a hint that we should realize that this is what the Isur is. But I don't want to be in the realm of the Torah. I only want it to be in the realm of the Rabbanon. For example, because by the Rabbanon, for Suffolk, you're Mekel. So therefore, since the Asmachta actually is supposed to somehow or another signify this Isa the Raisa, or this Isa the Rabbanon, and the Abishter wants that, says Rapados, but the word Kreva has nothing to do with standing in a certain distance. It has to do with intimacy, and therefore it cannot be an Asmachta. That's how perhaps we can learn the Machlokes of Chizah and Rapados. And then the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, so we're talking about not distancing yourself. So the Gemara tells us that Ula, we had something similar in Gemara Ksubis, that Yizayin obeys them, and Ula came home. Ula, when he came back from the Shiva of Rav, his sister raised him. So he would kiss her Abe Yodayu on her hands. And some say he had gloves on her hands, whatever, on her hands. But others say Abe Chadayu on her chest, because she nursed him. So therefore, he kissed her on the chest. And Taisi already says that he was such a tzaddik that, like we had the Gemara, that why Rav Gidl sat in next to the mikveh and they in Bracha and asked him, how can you will see all these women coming out of the mikveh, you might have loose thoughts. And he says that I don't get excited when I see the women. So same thing with Ula, that he's a big tzaddik and therefore he doesn't get no lewd thoughts come in. Yet he himself contradicted himself. Because said, generally you shouldn't be close to any family members. Meshumah says, leich, go, amrin nazir. We tell the nazir that who's not allowed to drink any wine, and he's standing there in a vineyard. We say, go, schar, go around. But the karma l'sikov, don't even get close. Don't tempt yourself. Why put yourself in a position of temptation? Anyhow, it says in the pasuk, la luka shtei bonus. La luka can either mean to Gehenim, or La Luka can mean to a leech. La Luka Shtebon. So this, let's say Gehenim had two daughters. Have, and they're screaming out the whole time, give me more. My have. Who are these two daughters and what are they screaming, give me more? Amarupa. Marupa said, Kol Shtebon Shetrakis Gehenim, the sound of two daughters who are screaming from Gehenim. But as they say, but Olam Hazeh, while they were in this world, Hava, give me. Umanino, who are these two daughters? Minos and Apokaitis are constantly trying to, they're evangelical, they're constantly trying to proselytize you, and the Haroshas and the government. They're always saying we want more taxes, we need more. Once you get too close to the government and they see that you live a good life, they seize everything you have. Ikadami, others say, Amar Chiza, Amar Marupa, Kol Gehenim, not while they're in Gehenim, they're screaming out, it's the Gehenim itself screaming out. But medicine says, hey, Bili, bring to me, Shtei these two daughters of mine who are still living in this world, while they're still living in the world, they're constantly demanding, Hava, bring me. Says the Gemara further, another pasuk, called all those that go into Avodah Zarah, and they don't come back and do tshuva, because it's such a strong addiction that it's impossible to do a complete tshuva. And they will not live the right way of life. If they don't do tshuva, it sounds like, what do you mean? How would you think that they would ever be able to be masik, to able to reach a long life, a life in a haba? I mean, what does it mean over here? If you cannot do tshuva, you won't do tshuva, then you won't do tshuva. What does it mean? So says the Gemara, this is what it means. If they do tshuva, if they do tshuva, they will not live a long life. In other words, somebody does tshuva from apokursis, they will die straight away. And the reason is for their own benefit. We actually had a Gemara Chagigah of Hey, where it says, Hey, bigdoish of lo yamin. And sometimes people pass away young because Hashem knows that they'll be tempted and they'll go off the way of the derech. So therefore, let them die young while they're still tzaddikim. Over here also, once they do tshuva from minus, we don't want them to live much longer because the chances are they are going to relapse and revert back to their Avodah Zarah because it's so addictive. This is the days prior to if you remember, we crushed the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. So therefore, they die straight away. Anybody who leaves minus will die. Others learned, Yetzer in the Sefer Devar knows exactly the opposite. He said everybody in this world has a purpose to do all the mitzvahs. But as soon as a person does tshuva from Avodah Zarah is basically the source of all the averos. If he does tshuva from Avodah Zarah, it's as if he did all the mitzvahs. If he really did all the mitzvahs, because if you believe in the Eibishter, then you believe in all the mitzvahs. If he really did all the mitzvahs, then what's he have to live for further? He completed his mission. And that's why he dies in a positive way. Anyway, when I ask a question, you tell me anybody who leaves Avodah Zarah eventually will die very quickly. And ask a question. He eats. He eats. A woman. The Chizah came for the Chizah. She said, "Kala shemikala is the lightest of the lightest." I did an Aveda. You know what I did? She sired her younger son from a union with her older son. In other words, she created a mamzer. She had a relation with her older son, and that's a small Aveda compared to the worst Aveda. What Aveda can be worse that you'll treat this as a small Aveda? Obviously, someone who leaves Yiddishkeit, someone who becomes a min. The Amalot of Chizah says, let her go ahead and prepare her tachrichim, because she's going to die straight away. And you have Mesa. And yet she didn't die. Now, you just said, also, because if she just said that this is a smaller Aveda, Miklal, what was the other Aveda she did? The minis. Nami Habibo. She just had minis. If she also had minis, so how come she didn't? She's doing tshuva now because she's confessing on all the sins. She just only highlighted the smaller sin. Then how come she didn't die straight away? She should have. You just said that as someone who's over the Avodah Zarah and then does tshuva, they die straight away. Answers the Gemara, she did not do proper tshuva, so that's why she didn't die. From that Avera of Midas. Now, I don't really understand the Gemara, and I was trying to look up to see if anybody asks it. We had a Gemara in Chagiga, in the Mishnah Daf Yud, I think it is, where the Mishnah says, what's an Aveda that you can never fix up? One of them is if you miss Krishma, and at the time, you can never make up. You can make up davening, you can't make up Krishma. And the other one is if you create a mamzer. Now, she can do tshuva today or tomorrow, but the fact is her b'nah hakotan is a living mamzer, a living reminder of that Aveda that she did. So therefore, her tshuva is not complete. It's just not complete. Not because of anything else other than the fact that there's a mamzer in the world. So that's why she didn't die straight away. Anyway, then it continues. There's another version of the Gemara's discussion here. It goes as follows.
Remarkable. Can you just explain? So if somebody does proper tshuva, they're going to die soon.
Only when it comes to addictive averas, we'll see them later. Another example of an addictive avera. An addictive avera, we feel, the Eibishter feels that you're not going to have the strength of character to maintain this tshuva. So for your benefit, you did tshuva, go to Olam Haba now, go to Gan Eden. That's the word, the way Rashi learns. So there's another version to this conversation. The minas in ma'aveda loy, you're telling me it sounds like only minas you die straight away, but not from other avedas. So go ahead and make for her tachrichim umesa, and she did die. Now the chayda, the only aveda that she did was what do you call it? Incest, and yet she died straight away. It sounded like from you the second version it's only Avodah Zarah that she died straight away. Answers the Gemara, even though she only talked about one Aveda, but because she referred to it as Kala Shebekalas, called the Minas Nami Habiba. So it seems clear she had other Avedas which are sprinkling. What's more severe than incest? It would be Ovid Avodah Zarah. And therefore, that's why she died straight away. I mean, it's just interesting that you refer to incest as kalis shebekalis. Okay, compared to Avodah Zarah, it's a smaller Aveda, but kalis shebekalis is much more than just a lesser Aveda. It's like nothing happened, no big deal. Anyway, saying about my Aveda, you tell me that Stam Avedas people don't die, only from Avodah Zarah. But Tanya, we look at the Braisa, Omru, all of they said, Al Rabbi Lezer ben Dudaya. They said about Rabbi Lezer ben Dudaya. He was called Rabbi Lezer at the end of the story, but already the Braisa refers to him now with respect to Rebbe Elezer. An amazing story.
This is a famous Meiser. This is a famous Meiser.
If I wonder why. So he decided that his hobby is to meet and have a relationship with every Zoyner in the civilized world. So he did not leave one zoyna in the world that he didn't have a relation with. Pamach is one shama he heard she has the new zoyna somewhere, but Yam way overseas. And the hoisin they tell us kissed in Mischada. She was very expensive. She charged a whole wallet full of dinner as payment. He decided, oh, this is my challenge. Not to kissed in the halach. He went for Avrala and he went over Shibanot. He traveled 7 rivers just to go. Bishas Hergel, as soon as they started to have a relation, just the beginning, before anything happened. Heficha. She gave like a sigh or she breathed out. And then Omer, she said, just like the breath that I just made, I cannot retrieve it. Sorry?
They will
never accept a tshuva.
And then he sits under a tree and cries.
Yeah, there's an argument in the Achronim whether she meant it to hurt him or she meant it actually to bring out the best in him, and she's saying, what are you doing? Yeah. That she's tried to make a mensch out of him. But either way, it suddenly triggered, it struck a chord. Holach v'yoshe ben shnei harim begvois, sat between 2 mountains and hills. And Omar, famous thing, he said, harim begvois, mountain and hills. Bakshu alay rachmim, daven for me. Omar, they said, daven for me that I should survive, and I should be able to do tshuva. We have our own issues. You got to worry about you. It says, that the mountains will disappear and the voice will slip away. We have our own future to worry about. Can't worry about you. Nope. Omar, he said, Shemayim v'aretz, heaven and earth. Why aren't you davening for me? So they said, why before we can daven for you, we got to daven for ourselves. And why is that? Because it says, the Shemayim is ka'oshen nimlochu, will disappear like clouds, and the earth kabegativla, will rot like clothing. Omar, then he turned to Chamalavana, the sun and the moon, Bakshu alay rachmim, daven for me. Omar, they said, before we daven for you, we got to daven for ourselves. Remember, it says, the Chofra halavana, the Lavana, the moon was embarrassed, and the sun was ashamed. So we have our own issues we have to deal with. Daven for me. Remember, it says in the pasuk, the Namaku Kultura Shemaim, that all the celestial bodies will disappear. If so, ain't it told it be? I got to take care of myself. Places his head amongst between his knees. The God b'bchi, and he cried until his neshama escaped his body and he died. Now, before we go to the question, in the Chassidish Sfarim it says, and I can't remember the details, what in the world's going on over there? And they say beautifully, and I can't remember unfortunately the details, but what they're saying here is people have a tendency, and we all have that weakness probably, or certainly some of us do, including myself, that we always try to shirk responsibility. If something goes wrong, we always try to find another reason or another cause, another person who's responsible. So when he sat down there and he started to contemplate his situation, he started thinking, well, I was brought up wrong. I had bad friends. I had a bad upbringing. It's not my fault. It was mitigating circumstances. So the first thing he says is, my parents. My grandparents, they're the mountain with the forebears, like this week's Parashat Bolok, when you read, where he describes our ancestors. It's their fault. So and they said, no, it isn't. We gave you the best chinuch possible as grandparents. So then he turns around to his parents and he says, Shemayim v'aretz, and then he turns around to the Rabbonim, it's your fault. And and he says over there, the Shemesh and the Yereach. And then he turns around to all the leaders in the community, the stars. It's all your fault why we grew up the way we do. And every one of them said, no, it isn't. We gave you the best possible opportunities. It's your own fault. Till finally he concluded and says, you know what? Ein hadavar toli elabi. I have to own up to it. It's my responsibility, and I failed myself, and I have to deal with it. And that's this discussion here in the Gemara. Then the Gemara continues.
Yeah, apparently there's some significance to where he says Hiniach Rosh Ben Birchov.
Yeah.
Which is something, what does it mean that he put his head between his legs, basically?
Okay. I think
So,
it's Ben Yoda that says something there, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
there's something in Kabbalah or something in relation to this.
I remember there's a big discussion. It's actually a little bit more in tomorrow's Gemara. It takes a very important place in tomorrow's Gemara. Whether you're allowed to take your own life to do tshuva, because he died here.
Yeah.
And it was like deliberate. He decided to end his life, and that was his form of tshuva. Are you allowed to do that or not? And there's a big discussion. And tomorrow's more as a thesis. If whoever's learning with you tomorrow, see if we can talk about that thesis. And there's a Bes Yosef brings different opinions. If you're allowed to, like we had a story in Gittin, the girls jumped off the ship when they found out that that they want the guy wanted to abuse them, and to avoid Aveda, are you allowed to basically commit suicide for tshuva to prevent yourself doing an Avera or not? And part of this discussion is this Gemara right here. But look at Rebbe's reaction. We already had it a few days ago. We have it here. We have it tomorrow again. Rebbe cried, Omar. Sorry, we skipped a line. It was a regular Aveda. It was znus. It wasn't apocorsis. And yet he died straight away. Hard to understand because he did it to himself. So it seems from the Gemara's question, the Gemara understood it was an accident. He didn't intend to die at all. He just put his head down there to cry, the Eibishter made him die. So we're asking, why did he die? You just said that only for Avodah Zarah do they die straight away. So my answer is, it's not Avodah Zarah, it's the addiction. Hasam nami, kivan the Avid Beit Tuva, even though this is not Avodah Zarah, this is nus, but because he was so addicted to it, he spent all this money and he traveled everywhere. So therefore, it's very easy for him to relapse. So therefore, if now at the stage he's ready to do tshuva, he died. So it's clear from the Gemara here, it's not the Avodah Zarah, it's more the addiction, the strong Yetzer Hara. So Bacher Rebbe, what's Rechi's reaction? Rebbe cried, "Rama, yes, Kohen Lama Kamashani." People take years to a Kohen Lama. The yes, Kohen Lama b'Shacha. Those are Kohen in 1 hour. And Rama Rebbe, Lloyd dying about tshuva mekamas. Now that we accept him, Rebbe, suddenly he got the title of Rebbe, even though he's only for a minute. Very difficult to understand. What's Rebbe crying? Well, is he jealous? What's his response? What's his reaction? He should be happy that another Yid did tshuva. Why is he crying? And it sounds like he's jealous. So the Zirachova wants to say, sorry, Abir Shalnatzim wants to say that if people can spend a lifetime Torah mitzvah, he says, but you're never really fully into it because you get so easily distracted and because everything takes time. But he, in 5 minutes, because there's nothing else he was doing, he was so focused that he was able in 5 minutes to achieve it. It takes us a lifetime and we'll never achieve it because we're never really that focused in any of the mitzvahs that we do. That's what he wants to say. But I think there's another pshat here altogether. Every person has to contribute to the world. You're not here just for yourself. You could have stayed in Gan Eden. What do you come here for? You came here to contribute to the rest of the world. Okay, Rabbi Lezer ben Dudaya did unbelievable tshuva and he passed away. But why would he go to Gan Eden? How did he contribute to the world? So Rebbe, therefore, when he heard this story, he began to cry and he was inspired to be more zoyer and to be more in mitzvahs and so on. So suddenly, Rabbi Lezer ben Dudaya contributed to the world because his story became an inspiration for others. And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. Why was this kind of lama bechulu? Because Bacher Rebbe, because I cried and he inspired me. Therefore, he now contributed to the world, and that was his chus. And I think that's why Rebbe cried about every single person that he heard for that very reason. Anyway, Rabbi Chanin Rabbi Yonason. Rabbi Chanin was traveling on the road. They came across 2 different paths. One went by a house of a church, and one went by a house of Beis Zaynis. And the question is, which is worse? They had no choice. They had to pass one of them. I remember in the yeshiva a number of years ago, they had to read a book in high school, and there were 2 books to read. And I remember there was a big discussion which book is worse. Both. One book was The Chosen, if you all remember The Chosen, and the other book I think was Lady Chatter's Lover or something similar to that. One was all about romance.
Chaim Potok.
Yeah, and the other one, Chosen, raises lots of doubts about Yiddishkeit. one challenges the mind and one challenges the heart. Which is more dangerous? Which book should you keep away from? And it was a big discussion because it's not it's not a straightforward answer. And here you have right here the same situation. You have one road passing by a base Avodah Zarah, another road passing by a house of Zionist. Which is more difficult? Which is more challenging, and therefore we should avoid? So one said to the other one, let's better travel by the house of Avodah Zarah, the Nachis Yitzrei, and because we no longer attempted Avodah Zarah, the religion Mar Sanhedrin, they crushed the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. It's not so tempting; it won't bother us. One said, no, I prefer we go by the house of Zionist. And as tempting as it is, we are going to control ourselves, and we'll get the schar for that. But the Kabbalah Agra, and we'll get the reward for controlling our Yetzer Hara. So Teisha says from here we learn out why did he say that? I mean, the fact is it's not good. It's not good to go by Beis Zionist either, because he felt as bad as a Beis Zionist is, a church is more dangerous, and you should keep away. Not only because it's dangerous, because you might be tempted. It's just a place of tumah, and you should keep your distance as much as possible. That's what Teisha's rules. Anyway, Kimata Hasam. When they came there, Hazino, they saw the Zionists, so all the Zionists walked away from them and went back to the Hazino and tried to tempt them. How do you know that? How are you so secure that we would be able to overcome the temptations? If you remember the Gemara in Sukkah, the end, Abaya there said that, when he saw this young couple walking in the forest, and he followed them and he realized that they were not doing anything wrong, he said, if it would have been me alone in the forest, who knows how I would have behaved. So how did you take on this challenge? Amalei, he said, because there's a pasuk. The pasuk says that the mezima tishmar alecha, that mezima will protect you. Mezima can either mean znus, and we'll soon see that mezima might mean the Torah, but tavuna, an understanding of Torah, tinatzachana, will protect you. So Amalei Rabban Rabba, my mezima. What exactly does mezima mean? If you're going to say Torah, that mezima is referring to Torah. It says the pasuk zima. It says over there that zimahi. When it comes to arayos, it says over there that she'ele zehena zimahi. That a few times she'ele zimahi. It's zima, and in the targum, it translates the word zimahi atzas chatoin. That this is the advice of the sinners. In other words, it's a bad advice trying to get you to sin. So in other words, the word zima itself means, to consult, to give advice. Uksi, when it says describing the Torah, hifli eitza hidu tushia, that the Torah gives you unbelievable advice. So zima means Torah. The Torah protects us. So that's why I knew we were secure. So zima, that's what it means. And it shouldn't say mezima. It sounds like from zima we're protected. According to you, zima itself is the one that's doing the protecting. It should have said zima. So he says, this is how we read the pasuk. Midvar zima tishmer alechat. That from Zima you'll be watched. Torah tinatzchana, the Torah will protect you. Now it's from Zima the Torah will protect us. That's why I knew we're pretty good. When he was arrested, Rabbi Loza part of Chanim Metradian. Amalei Rabbi Loza ben part of Chanim Metradian. Rabbi Loza said to Rabbi Chanim Metradian, "Ashrecha, you're lucky you. You're only arrested because on the grounds that you were teaching Torah in public when it was against the law. But I am in a bad predicament. I was accused of 5 different sins. We'll soon see the Gemara. Chanina said, "Ashrecha, you're lucky. You were caught because of 5 things. You'll be saved. Woe is to me. I was only arrested on the grounds of 1 of any nitzel, but I will not be saved." And you know why? Because you not only learned Torah, but a gemilas chasadim. You also did gemilas chasadim. Remember, we had the Gemara that if you only Torah, if you only have Torah, then you only live. Rabbah only had Torah, lived 40 years. Abaye, who had Torah, gemilas chasadim, lived for 60 years, because they're both descendants of Eli Kohen, who had that curse. So he says that you learned Torah and gemilas chasadim. You're all right. But I only did Torah, and therefore, this is Chanim Metradian saying. Anybody learn Torah on its own, it's comparable as if he has no God whatsoever. Shenemar says, "V'yomim rabim liyisrael." There were many days by the Eden without a truthful God. And then it says there without Torah. So we see that the first part of the passage there was Torah. So what are you missing? Gimel Chasadim. If you learn only Torah, don't make as if you don't really have a God. If you have a God, why are you only learning Torah? What about Hashem's mitzvahs? Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Chanina Betradia didn't do Emil Chasadim. It's clear the Gemara here uses the word Emil Chasadim. It doesn't mean literally. It means tzedakah. Because if you remember the Gemara in Kedushin, tells us the difference between Gimel Chasadim and tzedakah is very different. Gimel Chasadim makes a number of differences. Tzedakah is only la'aniyim, only to the poor. Gimel Chasadim is bein la'aniyim, bein la'shirim. Tzedakah is memoina with money. Gimel Chasadim is bein begufa, bein bemoina. If you help somebody out physically, Gimel Chasadim. And Gimel Chasadim, Moshe said, is greater than tzedakah. So even though we're using the word Gimel Chasadim, we mean tzedakah. So Gemara asked, Rab Chanina Mitradia didn't do tzedakah. What time we learned? You should not give money to a meshulach or to a gabbai of tzedakah unless the one who's appointed is somebody who has integrity and is honest. Chanina Mitradian. Answers that doesn't prove anything. He's very trustworthy. But the fact is he didn't do the mitzvah. He didn't give tzedakah. So what are you talking about? But Tanya, didn't we learn that Amalai, he said to him, we'll see tomorrow, Gemara, you want to know what merits he has, if he did anything good. So he said in tomorrow's Gemara, he said, I'll tell you what happened once. He said, Purim is tzedakah. That I'm Purim, generally tzedakah, the poor person can do with it whatever he wants. But the money that you collect and you give to the poor to be used for Suda's Purim, they have no right to use it for anything else but Suda's Purim. So he said that Moishel Purim, it once happened that there was money of Purim, you set aside, I had to give to the poor for the Purim Suda, but there's chalfully been Moishel Tzedakah. By mistake, I thought that was general tzedakah money, and I told all the poor to line up, and I gave them the tzedakah money, and that they could spend it anything they want. And then I realized, and I realized that I did the wrong thing, because now where's the Purim money? So I took my own pocket and I gave it to make up for that Purim money that I distributed as tzedakah money, and I gave it to the poor. So of course he gave tzedakah. Taisha does not like Rashi Pshat at all, because then the main part is missing from the story. So the story is not that he gave to the poor. The story was that he then took from his own pocket and replenished the tzedakah that he used for the wrong purpose, and he gave it out again. So that's the main focus. And therefore, Taisha learns a little bit differently what actually happened. That at the time when he was giving it, he already realized what he did, but because he called them all to collect tzedakah, he didn't want to embarrass them, and they changed their plans. So he knew right now what he was doing is going to cost him, and he still did it. And that's the greatness. So that's even greater than taking from his pocket. That later on we had no choice. Anyway, so the Gemara answers again. Mevid of it, yes, you're right. He gave tzedakah, but he could have done better. Anyway, so the Goyim brought the Parta to the court. They said to him, my time with Tanis. Why did you learn Torah? Well, my time, now he didn't give shiur in public. He just learned on his own, which is also forbidden. Well, my time again after. And why did you steal? You're a ganef. Omalu, he told them, E Saifa le Safra, famous saying. E Saifa literally means, it says in the Medrash, that the Saifa and the Safra, the spear and the book, the sword and the book, intertwined, came down from heaven. And you have to choose one of them. So, Saifa, if you're going to accuse me of being a robber with with a sword, everything else, le Safra, then I'm not a Talmud Chacham, I'm not a scribe. And Safra, if I'm a scribe, then le Saifa. I can't be in both worlds. Tesis and Tainas Dav Zayin and Al takes us a step further. Here we're saying you can't be a criminal and be a scholar at the same time. Tesis says that Saifa does not mean a criminal. Tesis says Saifa means a business person. He says you cannot be preoccupied in business and also be a Talmud Chacham. So either you have to choose Saifa or Safra. So Saifa le Safra, Safra le Saifa. So what he tried to say that wasn't part of was to the government, to the tribunal. The guy, the witness is a liar. Since he accused me of both, and since it's impossibly both, so since one of them can't be, the other one else is not true. So then question number 3, remember we said 5 things. So that's 2 so far. They accused him of learning and being a ganef. The third thing they accused him of, my time of Rebbe. So why do people refer to you as Rebbe if you don't teach? So he said, Rebbe, I'm the Rebbe of all the weavers. I'm a trade, they have a lot of apprentices, nothing to do with learning Torah. Isolated, so they decided to test him. They brought trei kiburi. They brought 2 balls of wool, and Omrele, they said to him, so tell me, hide the shasya, which is the vertical one, and hide the erba, which is the one that's horizontal. If you're not an expert, and one is thinner and one is thicker, if you're not an expert, you wouldn't have a clue. So he was Rabbi Elazar Parker was having miracles occurring all the time. A miracle happened. Asya, now this is amazing how Rashi learns out here. Asi ziburisa, there came a female. It seems that the vertical one is the receiving end, and the horizontal one is when the thread is much thicker. So that's the one that you thread through. So the receiving end is the vertical one, and the giving end is the horizontal. So the receiving end, the vertical one is like the female, the receiving end, and the horizontal one is the one who's the donor. Let's say is the horizontal one. So suddenly a female bee landed on one spool of thread, and also the shasya, and then Ba'asya is the Buddha, the male, the Yosef on the Erebus, and it rested on the one that was horizontal. Malui, then he realized hide the shasya, hide the don't know how in the world you can tell by looking at a bee whether it's female or male. In fact, Tesis questions Rashi, and he learns that Ziburta and Zibura are 2 different species. They don't even look the same. Nothing doesn't mean male or female. But the way Rashi learns male or female, interesting. How in the world would you recognize, which one is what? If you're not a beekeeper, and even beekeepers don't know if they can recognize the difference. Anyway, unless the queen bee looks so different, maybe queen bee versus other bees. Thinking about it further, okay, that's question number 4 now. Well, my time of Osis, why didn't you come to this place called Be'avidin, which is, according to Rashi, a house of Avodah Zarah, and we have a big party there. Why didn't you come? According to Tosfos, it was a place where they used to engage in debates and everything else, religious debates. Why did you attend? He said to him, I'm an old man, and I was scared I'll be trampled by the bad rush and the large crowds. They said, what are you talking about? How many people were ever crushed? It never happened before. Why suddenly are you scared? A miracle occurred. On that day, an old man suddenly got trampled. So they had nothing to say. Now question number 5. Why in the world did you set free your Eved? And it was a law in the land that you're not allowed to set free your Eved. He said to them, it never happened. Now, interesting, because in Jewish law, you're not allowed to set free an Eved either. It says, but we did have a Gemara Brachas and Gittin, an exception where, let's say, you needed to count the person in a minyan, then you're allowed to set free the Eved, because Gemara explains the mitzvah shiny or mitzvah berabim shiny. So maybe that's the story here. He set free an Eved for a minyan, and now he's lying about it. So that's the 5 questions. There's one anti-Semitic. La'asudim is ready to testify. What are you talking about? I saw with my own eyes that you set free an Eved. Also, Leo came along. He prepared as one of the dignitaries there. And on Malay, he turned to this guy who wanted to stand up and testify against Rabbi Elazar Parker. And he said to him, every accusation that he had, we all saw a miracle happen, and poof, then an old man got crushed. It's obvious what's going on here. Then he said, I'm warning you, surely he'll come out right and a miracle happen. And then you're going to stand there like an idiot because you're going to be embarrassed. You'll be humiliated in front of everybody because something is going to happen. Yet he was determined, this guy, to go stand up and accuse the part of liberating an Eved. He stood up to speak. Suddenly there's a letter, an urgent letter. Suddenly an urgent letter was written by the dignitaries of the king. It had to be sent to the case himself, to Caesar. They chose him to send it. So he had to stop whatever he was about to say and go on a mission. He couldn't refuse. The Hugavra also Leo came along. Leo he picked him up and he hurled him in the air, and he traveled 400 parsa, which is 4 mil to a parsa, so 1,600 kilometers. Also he went. He never came back. Never to return. Okay, that was they finished the party and they sent him home. Okay, these are the 5 accusations. They brought now in the Omru, they said to him, but I said, why did you learn Torah? Only one accusation. Omru, he told them, Kasha Tzivane Hashem, the way Hashem himself told us to do, that we need to learn Torah. And that was the answer. He was, not deterred at all by that. Miyad goes through all of the sefer. They decreed that he should be burnt. Ba'al ishte lahariga, and his wife should be put to death. And Ba'al bita, and his daughter, he had a few daughters, and one of them we'll see tomorrow's Gemara married Rabbeir. And his daughter, Leisha b'kubashal Zainis, should be placed in the house of Zainis. All of the sefer. Why did Hashem allow this punishment that he should be burnt? Big Machlek is showing what exactly it means. But Rashi learns Hoig Hashem B'Yisrael means that he knew the name of Hashem with 42 letters, which was only used in the Beis Hamikdash, and he knew it, and he did with it. Rashi has a strange expression. He did with it whatever he wanted. He did with it whatever he wanted.
He's one of the Rugei Malchus that we say on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur.
Yeah. But Rashi says in the last line in Yudayim Beis, "V'oise boy mashu chafetz." Like, no, he made miracles willy-nilly. He could do whatever he wanted. It very interesting expression. That he did with the Eibush name whatever he wanted. Anyway, so when I asked the question, how can you do that? How can you do it? But now we learned Elu. We had Merson Edgen and Perichelet. Elu she'elam chelam haba. The following people have no chelam haba. Ha'omer ain't Torah in Shemaim. Somebody says that the Torah is not divine. The ain't chis hameishim and that Torah nor comes to the Torah. And Abba Shaul says af ahoiges Hashem ba'oisi Yosef. Tosfos learns Hoig Hashem Yosef means we say in davening, we don't pronounce Yud K Vav K the way the vowels say. We pronounce it differently altogether. And he used to say it exactly the way the vowels are. Like the Gemara says, like Yishem Shaninikla and Nikra. We don't read it the way it's written, and that's what he did. He read it the way it's written, and that's a problem. Then Tais has an interesting discussion that even the first letter Yud K, obviously you're not allowed to say either, because Yud K is Hashem's name complete, even though you intend to say Yud K Vav K, Hashem's name complete. But then Tais has a discussion. When I was growing up, we always, when you want to talk about a demon, which is a shed, we never said shed, we say Shin Dalet. And the reason is because Shin Dalet is the first 2 letters of Shakai, of the Hashem Shakai. And Tesla has a discussion here. Are you allowed to say, just like you're not allowed to say Yud K, are you permitted to say Shin Dalet from Shakai? Or Tzadik Beis and Tzvakas? And he brings different opinions. So probably that's why in the email Tesla sort of leans according to the opinion that is inclined to say, no, these are Shemish and Mechaki, allowed to erase them, so it doesn't really matter. But nevertheless, people are zoyer in that. And the Gemara continues. Let's finish the sugi here. So that's why he was punished, that he got sreifa. Kiratanya, we learned. Someone asked a question. How did he do that? L'islamid of it. You're allowed to do it to learn how, to learn. If you're allowed to learn kisha, if you learn different things, you're allowed to learn. You shouldn't be doing it, but as a rav, as a dayan, you have to learn everything. Kiratanya learned the similar, so you shouldn't learn these things, how to do that. Avodah Zarah and all that. You're allowed to learn in order to understand and be able to paskin. So now Rashi, Gemara doesn't go any further. So Rashi therefore says to himself, so he did nothing wrong. Why did he get burnt? So Rashi therefore comes to a conclusion which is not like our Gemara, because he did not have the next line in our Gemara. So Rashi's conclusion is that when we say you're allowed to learn Avodah Zarah, all of these things, that's not true. Because by a tzaddik, the Eibush is medakta kechutz asayra. The slightest thing you do wrong, the Eibush punishes you. So what are you allowed to learn? You're only allowed to learn things like the image of the Lavana, things that are not really averis. But our Gemara has a whole different version. So our Gemara asks, Elamai timing on this, why was he punished? So when I answered, Mishum Hoyges Hashem b'frehesia. He shouldn't have done that publicly. He did it publicly. Quickly, so why was his wife then sentenced to death? Why did they allow that to happen? She should have protested. Big machlekes in the Rishonim, in the Rishonim as well, but the Achreinim, with Kiva Eged, the Noda B'Yehuda, in Hilchos Kiddush, whether women are Koyisra even if a woman are responsible for the men, are men responsible for women? If a man already made Kiddush at home in shul and was Yetzer, he made Kiddush, so he can go home and Kiddush with his wife again or not. Big argument in halacha, even though we pass you could. The Yehuda says he can't. And from here, they want to bring a proof that a woman is responsible for Raya. She got killed because she didn't stop her husband. Others want to say this is very different because when you see a person doing an Aveda, it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has to stop. It doesn't matter who you are. And maybe that has nothing to do with Arabs. Anyway, if I could have stopped you, prevented you doing Aveda, I don't, I'm responsible. Why did she end up there? I'll tell you why she ended up there. You know why? She deserved it in a way. In what way? She was once walking in front of these, I guess, officers from Rome. Amru, ministers, common noise. Wow, she walks and she looks so pretty, how her footsteps are so pronounced. As soon as she heard that, she became aware of that. So now she was very careful and she made sure that she walked in a very nice way. She took it to heart and that's how she behaved. And therefore she got punished. It wasn't sneeze. It says a pasuk, that the sin of my footsteps, Yisabeni, surrounded me. The sins that a person tramples on in this world, which is the case of the daughter of Chanim Trajan, will come and haunt you when it comes Judgment Day. And this Gemara finishes quickly. And all three were being led to their final punishments. Each one justified what Hashem did. No one had recriminations chas v'shalom to Hashem. Who are? But he said, Hatzur, the rock Hashem, Tamim Polek. Whatever he does is right. Each day, his wife said, Kelamuna, the God of faith, ain't Avol, never does anything wrong. And Bita Amra, and the daughter who ended up in the base of Avodah Zarah, she said that Godol ha'etza v'rava alila, that the etza, the advice, is great, and whatever Hashem does is wonderful. Because you're watching, you're monitoring everything that's happening. Nothing happens ad hoc, nothing happens at random. Whatever it is, this is the Eibish's plan, and they all gave themselves over to the Eibish. But it concludes, Rebbe. So Rebbe said that Kamak Doim Tzadikim Alolo, how great are these three tzadikim? Chanim Trajan, his wife and his daughter. Each one of them, what did they do then? Not one tiny. They justified whatever Hashem was doing at the time, as if they're doing the right thing. And the Gemara will continue with the story of Chanim Trajan tomorrow's Gemara. Okay, everyone have a good Vach, Shavua Tov.
Thanks,
See you
Shavua
next
Tov.
time.